Welcome back to GEMS Podcast. I am the founder and host, Miss Genesis Amaris Kemp. And with me today is Shakira Akins. She likes to be called Kira, better known as Kira Savvy. She's a proud mother of two, originally from New Jersey, has called Delaware her home for the past 15 years. She began writing short stories, poems, and screenplays at the age of 9 for church events and leisure, owning her passion at a young age for writing and creative expressions. Many years later, she married with a young child. She pursued her career as a writer, taking courses for a Bachelor of Science in Communications as a technical writing major with Kaplan University online. She would then move on to obtaining a certificate in health claims administration with the Harris School of Business and obtaining credits towards her associates in human services with Del-Tech Community College. Of the many triumphs and tragedies Kira's life has seen, at the young age of 34, her path has always brought her back to doing what she loves the most: learning, researching, and advocating for others through written and verbal communications. Um, Kira, Kara, having gone through a few career paths ranging from warehouse worker to corporate management, she has gained the capability to understand the importance of education, a positive outlook, and strong work ethics, which led her to starting literally Just Talk Radio, LLC, and that's spelled T.A.W.K, to acknowledge with knowledge. Amid the pandemic in April 2020, Kira received a chance to fulfill and answer a calling on her life. As a self starter in her many career paths, she understands what it means to connect others to different thought processes and ideas for self help. And without further ado, please welcome Kira Savvy.
Hey Genesis, how you doing? Hey everybody out there, and man, I'm excited. I love the introduction. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for being here. And before we dive into our segment today, which we're going to focus on the importance of Black representation in media and what does being a Black voice in media feels like, I want to go through an icebreaker. So I want you to share a fun and interesting fact about yourself.
I love icebreakers. Um, let's see, something that most people don't know. I absolutely love musicals. Like as a kid, I just saw myself as an adult, like in the musical, because I love to sing. Just the choreography and the dance, and then the storyline kind of all combined into one. And one of my favorite movies and musicals, Hairspray, hands down.
Yes, I was just about to ask you what's your favorite, but you already beat me to the punch. So now we're going to talk about the importance of being a Black voice in media, because sometimes, media, it's very saturated and you may not necessarily find somebody that looks like you that you could really resonate or just even have that mentor, whether it's formal or informal. So with you being in the media space and forming Talk, let's talk about how important is having your own voice and seeing representation to you? Yeah.
For so long, it's kind of been one of those things that you have to kind of come out a certain way of thinking in order to represent your true, authentic self. Growing up, I was always told to, wear my hair a certain way or speak a certain way to fit into social or certain social structures. There were times in my life where I was like the only Black girl in the school. No one's tone of voice was like mine. No one's hair was like mine. No one's skin color was like mine. And so I was always told to put myself in position to fit into these environments. Like, for example, my mother had a phone voice, which is actually a completely different tone and outside of what she would normally speak. My representation became important to me, and especially being a representative in media, knowing that I have to come up and show up as myself. We often have these facades of who we think we are, of who we think we should be in the environments that we represent. And the one thing I saw in media is anytime I saw like black news reporters, I will always ask myself, I wonder what they sound like in real life. Is that their real tone of voice? Their hair, is that actually the way their hair looks without them being on camera? And those things that really stood out to me the most in black representation was, who are we? You know, who do we want people to see? We surely want to be able to deny stereotypes about us, but how do we show up as our authentic selves to be able to represent ourselves? You know, and as a people, black people anyway, we come in different shades and sizes and, colors. It's just a multitude of ways that we can represent ourselves. So what looks like authenticity to us? I know I'm long-winded. I hope that answered it.
No, it definitely answers it because whenever you are taught to fit into a box that you necessarily don't agree with, then you begin to assimilate yourself or downplay who you are at the appeasement of seeking validations from other people who, don't necessarily give a flying saucer about what you bring to the table. So, and you mentioned something of the hair. So, me coming from a corporate background, and I spent 12 years in oil and gas. It's like they don't necessarily want you to wear your natural curly hair. But today you see I'm rocking my curls. They're popping. They're not popping as much as I normally like them to pop because I was in a rush. But I could wear my hair naturally curly or I could wear it naturally straight. And that's okay with me, but it took me a while to get here because whenever you're in certain corporate spaces, you have to be mindful of how you show up because certain things aren't seen as, you know, oh, appropriate or groomed or well maintained. And then you talked about your mother having a phone voice. And that's very true no matter what industry you're in. If you're African American, you see some people code switch because that's what they had to do in order to fit in. But why do we keep trying to fit into spaces where they never really appreciate what we bring to the table? Or if you hear someone who sounds and talks like you and I on the phone, someone may say, "Oh, I thought you were a white person," or "I thought you were Caucasian." When in actuality, I'm just educated and I can't help that I went to school and I know how to pronunciate and carry a sentence and etc. And then another thing is if you see an African American, a black, or like I like to say, chocolate drop, you can't expect that person to be the spokesperson for an entire racial group because not all of us think the same. There is diverse thoughts for a reason, and it's time that you need to wake up and get with the program. So I want you to go a little bit deeper in whenever what led you to forming TALK. And then I know we broke down the acronym in your bio, but talk about, coming up with Talk, the name behind it, and what was really your inspiration. Yeah.
Well, during the pandemic, like, or during the shutdown, if you will, a lot of us had time to really think, you know. And for me, it was a moment of thinking about, I'm kind of in flux. I'm in a medium between where my life was and where my life is going. So in that present moment, it's like me asking myself, I prayed about it because I'm a spiritual person, and really asking God, and who I refer to as Yahweh, the Most High, highest name of God. Um, what does my life look like from here? What is it that you would have me do in order to connect people to one another, even in a space where we had no connection at all? And the most profound thing that came up for me was the way I've always thought, the way I thought about myself, the way I thought about my surroundings, the way I thought about me as a mother, just all of these things coming out at once. So to acknowledge something, you're aware of its existence. You're aware of where you are, who you are in that present moment, and how you got there. but what about with the knowledge that you have that you can obtain to be a better person or to do things differently or to look at the hard aspects of yourself, of who you are, of your career, of your parenting style, of traumas in your life, the way you grew up, just all of these different things. How can you put yourself in position to grow? And for me, knowledge is power. That's how you grow. I've always been what I call a student of life. I love to learn. I love to learn new things. And what it gives me is an openness to want to share that with other people. Or even if they know something that I don't, to promote that, to promote excellence. If it's positive, if it helps us grow, if it's a way for us to be better as a unit, that's what I want to do. Just better human beings. That's all I want to do. And category of self-help really came from me just learning on my own outside of going to, school and obtaining 4-year, degrees or going to a 4-year institution. There were times where I couldn't afford to go to school and I couldn't afford to go back. So I put myself in position to teach myself certain things. And I started my podcast. I knew nothing about audio editing and media editing, but that led me to wanting to go back to school to find out. And I'm a communications major finishing my bachelor's for multimedia journalism. So it all starts with one process, with one thought process. So when you acknowledge that, you continue to find and seek knowledge to operate out of your higher self, to be your greatest self. And what I do for myself is what I want to do for others. And it's like I always say, it's there for you if you want it. You have to be open and accepting to wanting to help yourself so that you know what you need to get from it. So you know who you need to talk to. Because we can't always do it alone. We can't do it on our own. But what we can do is acknowledge it and continue to gain knowledge from it.
Absolutely. And another thing that you're doing is building legacy because you are a mother of two and you're pushing yourself to, acquire that new knowledge. But as you are acquiring that new knowledge, Kira, you're helping other people gain awareness on various subject matters whenever you are putting certain things on your platform. Even though you didn't know, okay, what is podcasting? What is it going to look like? You just took a leap of faith to start something. And you never know how that leap of faith can actually set you up for success. You never know how, the topics that you bring to the foreground are helping other people because we're all here on this earth to make deposits. And as we make deposits, we're able to make withdrawals, kind of like if the farmer never sows the seeds, are we going to reap the abundance? No. So you have to ask yourself, what gifts and talents do I have? And how am I being the steward of these gifts and talents? Am I burying my gifts and talents or am I going out and multiplying them? And a way to multiply them is to educate and link arms with other people who have, like minds, or they could teach you something, or they could call you outside of your comfort zone, or etc. And whenever I hear you talk about talk, that's what comes to my mind. And I like the way that you were intentional with naming it because it's like just talk, to acknowledge with knowledge. And then you put the radio aspect in it because sometimes people feel like, oh, I want to have a platform, but I don't know where to start, or no one's giving me a shot or whatnot. And to be a Black woman in media, you're giving other people a chance who look like you and I, because if they don't see any representation in the media space, then they may not think that there's room for them at the table. So sometimes you have to start and be the leader because we know there's a lot of celebrities in media, but if they're not doing anything to get other people to buy in based on the words that they're putting out, because media, what sells? Sex, violence, and drugs, and money. But if they're not putting any substantial information back into it to really educate and motivate people, then are we missing the buck? What are your thoughts there? And feel free to elaborate because I just want to make sure that I'm really connecting the dots because I know you have the communications major and I'm definitely not in that lane. My major is actually supply chain and logistics.
Well, listen, we could probably both teach each other something because supply and demand is like it's a completely different world. And I had a civics class, the economics class, and I'm telling you, it's a doozy. But for me, with communications, it's just learning how to what my communication style is, right? How am I an effective communicator? And I think the images that we consume have like always been around. They've always been a part of the rhetoric of Black culture, as far as like promoting sex, promoting violence, promoting drugs. It's kind of been around for a while. But we also had a time where there was what you call now conscious rap, you know, the Far Side, which is one of my most favorite groups. When do those things go away and how we increase representation? It really depends upon what we're promoting and what we're paying attention to. When we take an opportunity to want to know and want to learn and want to grow, then we'll redirect our focus. You know, prime example of what I call, ratchet TV, reality TV shows. For me, it was something like in a pastime that I could just sit on my phone and just go through clips and clips and clips at a time when I needed to be numb, when I needed to not think or not feel anything. But the aspect of what I was consuming was giving me a very specific picture of who, because it was typically us, Black folk, right? Featured in these reality TV shows of who we are when we face confrontation, of who we are in public environment, of who we are in the music industry, the entertainment industry. And because it's entertaining, we kind of take a liking to it. I feel like if we find more information around us to be entertaining, then we would be entertained by it. We would find it fulfilling, Everybody doesn't think that way.
Mhm.
Another thing I think about on the flip side of representation, there was a time around when Taraji P. Henson came on the scene and watching Baby Boy, but not after watching Baby Boy. It was seeing her in other roles, in different roles outside of who her main character was in that movie, and thinking, wow, she's still representing herself. She's still showing herself, but she can still display these different characters. Like, that's talent. That's talent. But her representation outside of that matters to her. Same thing with Tiffany Haddish. Straight. That's like, I feel like my sister next door. Her tone of voice, the way she speaks, her laugh. It's like I sound like that. Like, so if it's okay for these people to show up as themselves, and whether they're accepted or not, and be authentic to who they are, like, why shouldn't we? Why can't we? Just being unadulterated you, unapologetically you. And it's time for us to really change that notion that we shouldn't be.
Absolutely. And everything that you said is just so vital and so important because we have to not only look at where we started from, but we have to look at where we're going because it says people perish for a lack of knowledge. And also, I would also say people perish for a lack of understanding because if you don't understand who you are, then you're always going to fall victim to what the world is trying to paint an image of who you should be, when in actuality, that person is not who God created you to be. It's not who your maker or whoever you believe in created you to be. And, I am a woman of faith and spiritual, and I believe that each one of us has been placed here on this earth for a very specific purpose and reason. And until we understand that, then we're not going to be able to connect the dots, because we're going to try to be in competition with other people. But as we begin, to just really wind down, I want you to tell the listeners and viewers some tips that they could look out for to really help support Black representation in media, whether they are a Black person or whether they are an ally, because it takes different sides of the spectrum coming together and really intersecting to make this world a better place. Because you mentioned earlier, we can't do it alone, and we're not supposed to, because Rome wasn't built in a day. It wasn't built by one person. And just like, car manufacturers, it takes the engineer, it takes the testers, it takes quality assurance, quality control, and so many pieces to make a vehicle safe and secure to operate on the road. So if you think about that from a practical standpoint, and you think about where you are from a business standpoint, and also personally, because we need to have personal growth and development, which is going to help us professionally. Yeah. So
I tell you, the theme, honestly, of this year has been collaboration. So, about in a, I want to say, 20-mile radius of where I was, because I was in Wilmington and I'm currently in Pennsylvania, there is a gentleman who has a podcast that I've never met, never known before. And I'm now featured on his platform. It's called Mind of the Storm Podcast. Had I not looked at what he does and what he has as a chance to see something grow, for us to both come from where we are to get to another place, seeing that we're like-minded people, seeing that we want to support each other and support people or podcasters like us, support Black media, support the environment of Black representation, whether it be poetry, whether it be art, whether it be musicians, and just artistry as a whole. And then actually putting that with, multimedia or Black representation, we have to learn the definition of collaboration. We are not each other's competition in a sense. We shouldn't be each other's competition. Now, we're constantly in a race to be known on certain plateaus in certain areas in alignment with a culture as a whole. But Black people we really have to get in our minds that in order for us to get to what we see socially, we have to work together. We have to understand the meaning of collaboration. We have to understand the meaning of taking different parts from what we all have and putting them together to be able to grow and expand. Ultimately, it's not about just us individually. If we say we're for the culture, then that's a collective. That's an initiative. That means knowing what it means to collaborate. Take Genesis, for example. She has her own show. She has her own podcast. I have my own show and my own podcast. What we did ultimately is came together, shared our thoughts and our ideas to create something beautiful, to give something to the public. And I really think that's where we should start. We have to look to one another. We have to support one another. Reach out to see what's going on in your community. Who represents your community? What Black representation is there? Because I guarantee if you go looking for it, you will find it. That is almost a guarantee. And then when we have platforms of any kind, we have to be open and welcome to receiving that help, whether it be from us or whether it be from outside of us. Open the gate. It's okay. It's okay to let people in. You just have to know what it is that you want from each other. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to say, what do I want from this person? What can I give this person to be my greatest self, to be my highest self? Which is why I promote other people, because I know I'm giving something back. I know I'm giving something back to others. And that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Collaboration is not the new competition. Collaboration is a way to really create synergies and bring everything to the forefront so you can go faster and further together versus going alone. When you create synergies and you give, it is better to give than to receive, because if you give, things will come back to you and you may never know how it comes back to you. It may come back tenfold, a hundredfold, or a thousandfold, but you'll feel good because you gave with a genuine heart and spirit. And you also help somebody else who may have looked like you or who may not have looked like you. But each one of us is, is our biggest asset. And once we represent ourselves, then we're also setting examples. And as Kira mentioned, when you open the floodgates, yes, it's great to open the floodgates. And whenever you begin to build those relationships, it's good to establish boundaries so communication lines do not get crossed. So you know where you stand, but the other individual knows, where they stand. And then you have respect. I can't stress this enough. You have to respect one another in order to make sure that you don't have the whiffle method. Some may say, well, Genesis, what is the whiffle method? It means what's in it for me, and change that to what's in it for we, because there's a way, and way. Listen to me. I can't stress way. There is so many ways out there that all of us can break bread together and really form that unity. There's more than enough seats at the table for us all to eat and win. And there's plenty of enough assets out there for all of us to partake in. So don't allow, oh, well, if I, collaborate with this person, they may pass me up. That's the crabs in the barrel mentality. You got to get out of that and represent yourself in a great light and help others represent themselves too. Because sometimes people may never find out who they are until it's too late. So I just challenge you to do that. And Kira, what is your call to action for this segment? What do you want the listeners and viewers to walk away with or do from listening to you speak on Black voices in media and Black representation in media as a whole?
For one, pay attention. Pay attention to and support your Black voices, Black representation, Black podcasters in the area, journalists, people who promote art, people who promote poetry. Support them, because there is so much potential around us that is untapped that we don't even know of. And it comes from us not being able to support one another, collaborate, learn to work together as, Genesis said, with synergy. Let's take the concept of competition with one another out of our minds. Because truth be told, our communities are us, our surroundings are us. We may not necessarily be products of our environment, but our environment is who we are. Take a look at what needs to happen in your environment, in your community, in order to see it prosper, it grow, for us to grow, for us to be better people. But most importantly, definitely learn to collaborate. You don't know what gift someone else has for you just by putting yourself in a position to be. And that's fact of the matter.
And Kira, how can the listeners and viewers connect with you via your website? And where do you primarily hang out on social media?
You can find past episodes of the podcast on www.ljtrtawk and I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Savvy Kira. That's SAVVYKIRA. And my live recording is every first and last Saturday on Mind of the Storm Facebook page. And you can find that and updates at my Instagram and my Facebook page.
And there you have it, listeners and viewers of GEMS Podcast. Once again, I am the founder and host, Ms. Genesis Amaris Kemp, and you just heard Kira Savvy, who's also Shakira Akins, for those who know her. All of her contact information will be in the show notes, so there is no excuse for you not to connect with her. Make sure you subscribe and share this segment. We are found on 40 plus platforms. You can also follow us on YouTube at GEMS with Genesis Amaris Kent for all things video content. We are ranked in the top 3% per listennotes.com, and that is the top 3% globally. We're also looking for brand ambassadors and brand sponsors to continue the mission of GEMS podcast, which is to educate, inspire, and motivate while bridging the gap and connecting the dots between diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because it takes all of us coming together to make this world a better place. You can find out more information by going to genesisamariscamp.net, clicking on the podcast tab, and looking for sponsorship. And until we chat next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing day, and remember, take a leap of faith, get outside of your comfort zone, and represent yourself how you want to be depicted, not how the world depicts you.